this, which I will, and I'll let you speak a little bit about yourself and your background, okay?
Sure. And I'm glad to join Mia, and I'm glad to join FDU and the professors here and yourself and the students and the wonderful students. And I look forward to any advice I can give you. So I've been a pharmacist for 29 years. I graduated from University of Connecticut. I'm a Husky. That's where I've got my 5-year bachelor in pharmacy back then. And I got my MBA at SCSU, which is Southern Connecticut State University. So you become a Connecticut person. And I went there as I was working at Bayer. And I also have been board certified in pharmacotherapy, which I think is a great way to really boost up your therapeutics if anyone wants to do this. And I started at CVS back in the day as a pharmacist when it was still a regional chain. And I liked my time there. I really enjoyed pharmacy back then. But Bayer was actually in my hometown, and I kept sending my resume over. And finally, somebody suggested I send it to a contract agency. So I did that. I got into Bayer. I started in medical information, and I have kind of been here for a long time, kind of worked my way up, done some other things, did a lot of medical training along the way. And then Bayer moved to New Jersey. I didn't go right with them. So I went to Rite Aid as a 7-year pharmacist, for 7 years as a pharmacist. And I also gave the flu shots and everything there. So I liked some of the advancements, but I found times in the pharmacy were a lot harder than my first 7 years, which is something you guys may know very well. I don't so done while I was at Bayer. I'd done some time with the mom and pop as a pharmacist. So I have a lot of community retail pharmacy experience. And also during my time at Rite Aid, when I wasn't working, I was during the day, I also did a lot of consulting in the pharmacy benefit management field. So that's kind of my background. Oh, and then back to Bayer now, where I am currently still in medical information. And I can tell you a lot about that job. If you're interested, I could tell you about MSL. I have been in MSL wing as a trainer. And well, anyway, I hope I can tell you guys a lot and answer any questions you have. So I hope that helps.
Okay, thank you, Steve. So now I also see Dr. Patel joined us, another one of our internal faculty who is on our fellowship committee. So Mia, I'm going to turn it over to you now to tell us a little bit about your background and role within BD.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Mia Weiss. As Dean Rossi mentioned, I'm a manager in the HOR Center of Excellence here at BD. And I've been a little bit my background, and I'll share a little bit about my experience with FTU at BD. I have an MPH in epidemiology and biostatistics from Columbia. And prior to that experience, I come from a little bit of a different background, a non-clinical background. I did my undergrad in molecular biology from the University of Pennsylvania. And prior to grad school, I actually spent a few years working in strategy life sciences consulting, and mostly focused on small pharma and biotech companies. So I have a lot of experience more in the marketing and market access world. And during my MPH, I actually worked at Celgene in their HUR department, and have been at BD for now about 2.5 years. And my role at BD is in, for those who, I see some names who I think have actually rotated in our mini fellowship. So you guys might be familiar with this. We are separated into different business units, but we also have a central team. And I sit on that central team, and we actually support all the different business units and are sort of like an internal team. And we're in our 3rd year of the HOR fellowship with FDU. And I manage both of our fellows, and I've done that for the past 2 years. And we also, I think most of you are probably aware, have a mini fellowship program with FDU, and also manage a number of the students rotating through.
Okay, thank you very much, Mia. So would any of our internal faculty like to weigh in a little bit about the fellowship committee that we kind of are launching here to have a consistent, I guess, cohesive group of faculty interviewing students for fellowships? Dr. Hahn, you just want to weigh in quickly?
Sure. My name is Jae Young Han. I have a PhD in pharmaceutical socioeconomics. I've been teaching HUR at FDU for 5 years. And I have been interviewing candidates for HUR fellowship for 2 years.
Okay. And who do we have? Dr. Otito, would you like to say a little bit about your background?
Yes, hello everyone. Sorry, my sons are doing their homework in the background. My name is Otito, and I have a PhD in pharmaceutical sciences, and also I trained in clinical pharmacology, so I'm more on the scientific side. But I've been on the committee with Dean Rossi, Dr. Han, and Dr. Patel this is our second year, or my second year on the committee now.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, everyone.
Okay. And Dr. Patel, how about you?
Hi, yes, good evening. Thank you, Steve and Mia. It's such a pleasure to have you here for our students. As Dean Rossi mentioned, we're the faculty that are here. We're in the fellowship committee, and our goal essentially is just one, to provide our students with the insider perspectives on how to be better prepared for postgraduate training. So we're starting off the series with you guys, with the fellowship, with your experience in pharma, to sort of provide our students with more information related to what a fellowship encompasses, how can they be better prepared, what would you look for in a candidate to be successful. And we're going to continue on. We have a residency panel coming up later this week, and then we're preparing our students to make sure that their CVs and their cover letters are up to par before they come to the committee. So that's our goal essentially here, to make sure that our students have the information necessary to be successful in a postgraduate training.
Thank you, Dr. Patel. So I do have a couple of questions that were submitted by the students ahead of time, and I think it's just going to be great to get everybody's different perspectives on the same question. So the first one is, Stephen, I'll actually have you kick this off. So everybody shared your respective backgrounds and roles within your company, but what are the basic overall characteristics or qualities in an ideal fellowship candidate? So Steve, I'll let you ask, I'll let you answer first, and then I'll go over to Maya, okay?
Yeah, sure. And I'd love to hear what Mia says as well, to see how we can compare the two. But obviously we're getting the cream of the crop in our fellowships everywhere. And we're getting very educated, very experienced students. So you have to have that experience, but how do you stand out in terms of that? I look for personal attributes. And as you know, Barbara, I do a very good job of picking some of the students.
Yes, you do.
So I'm really looking for that. I'm looking for somebody who's motivated. I'm looking for somebody who wants to learn. I'm looking for somebody who's hardworking, dependable, who's going to get along with everybody. So whatever, I guess you would say, maybe Mia can help out here too as well with what she thinks, but soft skills, competencies, those type of things really stand out in an interview. And I guess you could really best get there by understanding someone, but by being yourself in the interview and by really listening to the person. Give the person in the interview the feeling that you're listening to them too. So that's kind of what I look for. I look for somebody who really stands out that way. And it's very difficult. It's very difficult. Sometimes we have 4 finalists and it's very difficult to distinguish. Sometimes maybe we can throw off one finalist, and sometimes it's just because they didn't really prepare for the interview, even though we thought they were great. So never go unprepared to your final interview, because that's an easy person to throw out, but sometimes it's very difficult. And we'll have like 8 people decide and everybody has a different idea of 1, 2, and 3. And the third person just misses.
Right.
So that's
Steve,
the way to stand out.
I'm going to ask you a question, because this has come up in a couple of interviews, not just with my respective peers here in the fellowship interviews, but in other interviews I've done. How important do you think it is for the candidate to research thoroughly the company that they're interviewing for?
Yeah. I think it helps a lot. People want to see that. They want to hear that you have interest and know something, and it gives you something to talk about. I mean, you might not, but if it comes up, you can really relate your experience to what you know about the company. But I think it's more important to listen really what the interview's saying about the company. Maybe you can use it to kind of probe a little bit. So I think you should.
Okay,
I think it's something that's really important that could help.
okay. Thank you, Steve. So Mia, I'll let you weigh in. Same question.
Sure. So first, want to strongly agree with everything that Stephen said, and also say that, of course, we know everyone's coming in with a strong educational background. So I'd say that's kind of like a big checkbox. But the main thing I would say, because we know students may not come in, may not have experience doing specifically work in HOR, we're really looking for transferable skills. And that involves a lot of, again, the soft skills that Stephen mentioned. So I would say a big thing personally for me, and this is both in all the application materials and in the interview, is communication. So I think how you present yourself, how you're able to speak to your attributes and kind of speak to some of your skills is super important. And I also think that's a really important skill just as you're in your career within industry or in academia, kind of, I would say, in most things you're trying to do. The other thing I would say is the ability to actually say why you're interested in a fellowship and why you think it's a good fit for you. Because that's one thing I would say we often see sometimes in cover letters as well as in interviews. We want the candidate to be able to speak to their experiences. So not necessarily just write it down or kind of read off an application. We want to be able to have a conversation with someone where they can actually be able to articulate why they're actually interested in the role. I would say a few other important skills are being a quick learner. I think that's, again, also important in most areas. Interest in what we're doing. But again, at BD, at least our fellowship, we're not expecting everyone to come in, works day one with all the skills. The point is that we want someone who's willing to learn, willing to work hard and apply their base knowledge and those transferable skills to what we're doing. And just to also answer that question about research. So I would say, I definitely think it's important. I don't think there's any expectation for anyone to know all of our products because we have, I can't even learn new ones every day. I think at least a major thing for us is knowing that we're not a pharma company, we're a device company. And knowing a little bit about what that might mean and what kinds of devices we have. So I think that's definitely important, but I think knowing our structure, knowing lots of things about how the team works, I think, again, as Stephen said, listening to what the interviewer said and being able to comprehend that, I think is also super important, like in terms of like conversation type of thing.
Okay, so before I ask my colleagues to weigh in from FDU, I know you're both aware that we offer our students the opportunity to pursue a dual degree. Okay, so some of the folks that you'll be interviewing from our program may have an MBA, they may have a master's in public health. That's actually a new offering that we're going to have. So one of the questions was, does a PharmD degree coupled with a master's degree increase opportunities to secure a fellowship? Is it a differentiator, or is there something else that you look at with a student that may not have that dual degree? So Steve, can I run that by you first to see if you can weigh in and give a little insight on that?
Yes, I have some very good insight on that because I don't personally look for that. And you wouldn't in medical communications or in medical science liaison, except it is something that most students are coming in with. So it's kind of a benchmark for your competition. But our pharmacist who runs our PharmD fellowship for business requires it.
Okay.
So it is very important to some, and he will not even consider even very successful students that he has, very personable ones, unless they have a dual degree. So I think there are going to be places where it stands out, but not everywhere.
Okay, thanks. Mia, how about you?
Sure. So at least for the BD program, It's definitely not something we're specifically looking for. But again, I think there are skills that you might learn from some of those additional degrees that are certainly important. And I think students coming in with a better understanding of the industry, of the landscape, that definitely can be helpful and can be a distinguisher. But the actual like degree in itself is not something that, from my perspective, would distinguish a candidate. But I do know that for other programs that not necessarily BD, that might be something that distinguishes candidates.
Okay, thanks. So Dr. Otito or Patel or Dr. Han, anybody have anything to add to that particular question? Feel free to speak up. Okay. Okay. So now one of the questions, and this was an interesting one. So is it, let's see, should you, I'm trying to see, I want to make sure, should you apply for the same fellowship, if you really want to secure a fellowship, at multiple companies or multiple fellowships at the same company to increase your odds of securing it? This was an interesting question that came across, so I'll repeat it again. So should you apply for the same fellowship position at multiple companies or multiple fellowships at the same company? So anybody want to tackle that first?
I'm happy to.
Okay, go ahead, Mia.
I'd say from us, because one of the things we're specifically looking for is that a student is in fact interested in health economics and outcomes research versus just an industry position in general. I would definitely say that apply to the same fellowship in multiple companies, because I would say one thing that I can speak to is if it becomes clear that a student is not necessarily interested in our fellowship or might just be interested in a fellowship in general, that doesn't actually make the student a strong candidate. We probably prefer a student who really is able to express interest in our particular function and role. And that might just be because we are a unique function. So that's, I would specifically say that, but also just speaking, I would say from personal experience, obviously as someone who recently went to grad school and went through the job application process, I would say definitely understand that people might be interested in multiple different roles at different companies. And that of course makes total sense. I would say just make sure for that to be able to articulate for each separate role why you're interested in that role.
Okay. Stephen.
Wow, Mia couldn't have gave a more perfect answer. We agree wholeheartedly. When we see a student applying to multiple fellowships within our company and within another company, we might think that we're not really sure what they're interested in. The number one thing we want to see is that they're interested in our company. But the other thing we want to see is that they are interested, like Mia said, in the particular area they're applying to. But we also know that you can't just put all your eggs in one basket. So don't do that either. Make sure you do apply to enough of them to give yourself a chance to win. But keep in mind to really express your interest in that area, in that company, and let the person know that this is your first choice. This is what you want to do. Don't ever go into HEOR and say, well, I'm applying to HEOR, but I really want regulatory strategy. Go in and say that you're interested in what you're interviewing for, and do try to have some limit on how many you go for. Our director, Mark Rometta, really actually looks strongly at that. He doesn't want to see, because we sometimes have number one candidates who end up somewhere else. And then we invested a lot of our interviewing time into that person. So use your judgment, don't limit yourself, but don't look like you're all over the board.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Okay, Dr. Patel, anything you would like to add?
No, I couldn't agree more as what Stephen was saying. Don't put your eggs in one basket. Definitely apply for multiple different pharma companies. If you have a specific area that you're interested in, definitely look for more opportunities than just focusing on one company, but be very clear in articulating your expertise and how it helps you for the position that you're applying for. So couldn't agree more with Mia and Steve. Thank you.
Okay.
Can I add one more just quick
Yeah.
point?
Yeah, sure, Mia, go ahead.
The other point I just want to add that we know when students are just trying to get different opportunities to be in industry, that it's definitely not any sort of, we understand if you worked in a different function or something like that, that's definitely not any sort of negative. You then choose, oh, you want to now do medical affairs or medical information or HOR. It's just about articulating what experiences you glean from that other function and why you want this, whatever function you want now.
Okay, great. So our next question has to do with, so now we're talking basically about, how our students who have a PharmD can secure a fellowship. And then from there, they would have that fellowship behind them to then segue into hopefully, gainful employment within pharma post the fellowship. But one of the questions here is the suggested ways to enter the pharma industry with only a PharmD. Now, I'm not minimizing, of course, the PharmD degree, but for those students who are not pursuing maybe a dual degree, or they're not opting to do a fellowship, what, being that you're, so well networked within your own organizations, what suggestions would you have for a student who's graduating out with only a PharmD, but yet they would like to pursue a career in pharma? So Steve, you want to tackle that?
Yes, I think I'd answer it the same way. So for the business fellowship we have, they do want to see it, but we don't really want to see it necessarily, even though I have one, an MBA and somebody who does medical communications. We just want to see that you're a healthcare professional. And also MSLs. I think the MSL role, it would help you. I think obviously, and Mia can speak to the HER role, the market access role, like a business or an MPH would help you. So I think knowing the role and knowing what you need. Medical communications, there's less of us, but I wouldn't let it stop you, again, because I think what everyone's going to say too is that your skills, and like Mia was saying, we want to see somebody that's motivated, that wants to be that has transferable skills. I wish I was taking notes on some of the stuff she said, but that is what we want to see. Somebody who can come into it and will train well and do the job well. So I don't think it would necessarily be something that would leave you out. So you still go for it, is what I'm going to say, and try to understand where you have the greatest chances.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Mia, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, I think what we're commenting about is pass in without the fellowship or with the different degrees. I just want to clarify.
If let's say somebody came to secure a position with BD, but on their CV, it only shows that they have a PharmD. They have not done a previous fellowship or don't have any dual degree behind that PharmD. That's the terminal degree is the PharmD.
So I mean, I can speak to experience that at least for our team, definitely not any sort of precursor. We might be looking for previous work experience. That would be, I would say, probably a precursor to go in, because we have basically various levels, and the fellowship is sort of an easy path to enter. So if you're not necessarily entering through the fellowship another way, there might be some teams that might have a contract position, or you can pursue working at a consulting company and then go from consulting into our team. But I would say a fellowship is definitely not a precursor. Again, this is speaking for the BD team. We have a very diverse background. So again, personally, I have just a MPH. I have any prior fellowship experience, just work experience. So I would say overall, maybe in conclusion, we view the fellowship as a training opportunity and work experience. So if the candidate can demonstrate other similar experience where they are gaining similar skills, definitely not a precursor.
Okay. Any of our faculty would like to weigh in on this question? Okay. All right, so let's see, next question. So once you are gainfully employed within a respective pharma company and you've kind of, I guess, made the folks that you work with and your peers know what your skills and your expertise is, how easy or what is the ability to transition within the same company but into another area? What about that mobility or portability to go back and forth into other areas without having to leave the organization? So is that easy? Is it not easy? Is there kind of a pathway to success on how to navigate that? So Mia, I'll let you answer this one first.
Sure, I would say, particularly within the HOR function, it's extremely easy. I can give two recent experiences actually of MCPHS fellows who did a 2-year fellowship in our diabetes care business, and one is in marketing now, and one is in market access. And so I would say, because our function works so cross-functionally and we have strong relationships with both commercial and medical functions, it usually is pretty easy to switch over. And I would say even outside of fellowships, the function in general has a strong history of people moving between different functions, particularly I would say between HUR and marketing or market access is probably, I would say, the more traditional route. But it's all about, I would say, you're thinking about what development opportunities you want and speaking with your manager about what kind of roles and opportunities you're interested in order to ultimately achieve your career goals.
Okay, that's a good point, Mia, because we try to tell our students that, you know, in addition to advocating for their patients, they need to advocate for themselves as well. So that's a very good point. If you don't, you know, verbalize yourself to your respective manager or director and let them know what your career opportunity path is, they're not going to know if an opportunity comes up that you're even interested. So that's a very valid point. Thanks for sharing that. Steve, what are your thoughts about this?
I second that great point. Make sure you let your manager know your career plans. They have career plans as well. And you will come in on an entry level for anything and you do move up. Like me, I can give a lot of examples, and I always tell the students all the examples of everybody who has done so well. So you have to know the career ladder. With us, you will start off as a manager, then you can go to associate director, and then you can go to director. But you won't we're always going to have a physician as a overall senior director. MSL, you will start off, there's different levels of MSL. And as Mia can speak to, there will be a career ladder. So know your career ladder. And yes, you should be able to move up. And marketing, you always move up, by the way, too. And market access, you'll move up too. Know the department structure. Yes, you should move up a couple things. And there are some students who have done so well that they have gotten offers from other companies. And yeah, sometimes early in your career or anytime in your career, you will move, but I don't think you have to. And I think you will do well, but you have to do it by showing you're ready to outwork everybody, that you're eager to do very, very well, that you're a team player. You have to have those attributes that are going to make you really succeed and people want to promote you.
Mm-hmm. Great. Any faculty want to weigh in? Okay, you guys are just, you know, and what's so refreshing is that it appears that it doesn't really matter what the company is, or whether it be a medical device company or a pharma company, but the skills and the attributes that you're looking for potential, you know, either fellowship candidates or even for potential employees is basically the same. So the skills and how one conducts themselves, the ability to have those soft skills and assimilate into the culture of a company is really very much embraced regardless of who the company is. So I think that's great that both of you are kind of on the same page with a lot of the responses, because we tell this to our students, but it's nice to hear our, you know, external partners, you know, mirroring the same thing that we tell them many times. So one of the questions here is, you know, and we say this all the time, that pharmacy is a very small world and you never know where you're going to end up, and you never know who knows someone that you know. So I'm going to ask both of you what you feel is your or your comments on the value and positive impact of networking throughout your entire career. So I'll let you go first, Steve, on that.
Yeah, that's great. And just to kind of reiterate something that we were talking about before, and Mia said, I actually started as a consultant. So it is a great way to get your foot in the door. And that does tie into this question as well. But the main thing is in your networking is you really want to leave a positive impression on people. And sometimes it's not showing them that you're the shiny star, but you really want to be seen as a thoughtful person, a team player, a kind person, someone who listens to other people's point of view, somebody who has those communication skills. So yes, Barbara is exactly right. That's how you create your opportunities. And you guys, with this fellowship and all the contact with the rotations, everything you have these days, you can really, and social media, you can have quite a network. And yes, it is that network that will drive your opportunities. But always remember to leave a positive impression on everybody, because I think at the end of the day, that's what really does it.
Thank you, Steve. Mia, anything on your end?
Definitely echo and agree with everything Steve just said, and also just add that the network also in whatever job opportunities you have, both with whoever you're working with internally or externally, are also super important. I can say at least, I know we work with a lot of different teams internally and externally, and you kind of never know when different paths have crossed. And I would say most of the time when we work with different vendors, again, HUR is also a very small world as well. All sorts of different paths have crossed. So I'd say it's always very important to think about what impact you're having, and also thinking about how you're conducting yourself, no matter what experience it is. And I would say one thing that I know we really appreciate is earnesty and honesty. So for instance, and this might go down to an interview, if it's an answer or something you're not familiar with, I really appreciate when candidates are pretty earnest about what their realistic experiences have been. And I would say definitely something that we appreciate. And that's something I know I appreciate when I work with various external vendors, because that means that it's someone I can trust and count on.
Thank you. So this just popped into my head right now, so I'm going to kind of go off my little script here a little bit, but I know, companies have been interviewing folks remotely via Skype for quite a while. This is nothing new. But for students, it may be because they're used to the traditional type of interview format and, process, decorum, that sort of thing. So with the advent and the need for these Zoom interviews now that are kind of taking the place of having students go to the ASHP and all the normal methods of interviewing, are there certain things that you folks are looking for in how one conducts themselves in these little Hollywood square kind of boxes that we're all looking at each other in? And how do you let that personality come through when you kind of are restricted in being very animated or whatever? So do you have any tips for students on how they could, optimize that Zoom interview and really try to make their personality come across when it's not really face-to-face in the same room with somebody? Steve?
Yeah, I would say that that's definitely what you need to do. You need to get your personality to come across, and you kind of are in a Hollywood square, and I think you have to avoid getting nervous in that. But again, then if you were in an interview with more than one person, you might feel the same way. But I mean, I really think that you could come across, if you're well prepared and if you have the right skills and you follow all the advice that we have been giving you on this call in terms of how to really communicate your skills and how it fits the position, and really listen to everybody. I mean, in the room itself with people, I thought I was always very good at picking up social cues from the interviewer and getting their personality. So that might be a little bit more difficult, but I tell you that anytime you can do that, that's very good. So I try to give my students a lot of one-on-one experience with a lot of other people who they will eventually be interviewing with. So I guess any practice you can get helps, because you're really trying to gauge that other person and learn about them, learn about what they want from you. And that part might be more of a challenge, but you should be able to come across well, I would think, in either live or over Zoom.
Okay, Mia, do you want to add to Steve's insight?
Yeah, I personally haven't done any interviews via Zoom yet, but I can say from other meeting experiences, usually I do find that people are able to express themselves and show their personality. Again, as Steve was saying, some of the main things, even in in-person interviews, thinking about how you're presenting yourself. So how you're putting yourself together, having your 5-minute elevator pitch put out there. I know I do not want a candidate to be reading off their resume. That's like a huge thing for me, I would say, at least personally. So having those kind of things, coming prepared, thinking about how you want to present yourself, speak to your attributes, I think that's going to be important in no matter what format.
Okay.
And
Right.
have your technology up and running, have your lights on. Look at Mia's background right now. That's what you want. You want a nice, clean, professional looking background. I know as a student, you might not have your own living arrangements, but whatever you can do to create the most professional background you can. And also, yeah, and you're a parent. So really pay attention to the fact that you're on camera and you have to create that good on camera impression.
Okay. Faculty, anybody want to weigh in with anything on this particular question?
Yeah, Barbara, it reminds me of the time when we had to interview a couple of candidates online earlier this year when we went into the quarantine and the lockdown, and I was very impressed that our students were prepared. And I don't remember if they had gotten insights like they're getting today from Stephen and Mia, but the other aspect of it is that sometimes a student may get into the too comfortable zone as well because they're at home and it's online and they're like, maybe I can just post something on my wall and just read it off of that if somebody asks me this question out of nervousness. And I think it's really, really important to just bring yourself to the interview and not, even if you're at home and you're in that space that you're most comfortable in, but still continue to exhibit professionalism and come out as your natural self is very important on these online interviews. So definitely something to read up on for our students before they go out on these interviews, which are likely going to be conducted over Zoom or Skype, on just some things to keep in mind on how to present themselves. But
Thank you. Okay. One of the other questions here is, and Stephen, I guess, from what you had mentioned earlier, with your background, you said that you did some contract work, you were in CVS, you worked for Rite Aid, et cetera. And, you're kind of like our poster child for what I try to tell our students, in that pharmacy truly is a portable degree. You could do so many different things with it, and the transitional skills are just so applicable to many different areas of pharmacy practice. So, pharmacy really is a lifelong learning profession, but extremely portable. So having said that, one of the questions that was submitted is, what future trends do you folks see, if any? I mean, this is kind of a tough question with COVID and the market, and there's a lot of uncertainty right now. But do you see any future trends within your organizations that pharmacists may be looked upon as having value to contribute in those areas that maybe they weren't looked at before?
Yes.
Okay, Steve, you're first to the dance. Go ahead.
So I think that the sales organizations have been kind of declining, which is sad because it was a great profession for sales professionals who have done very well. But if you look at it, healthcare providers really don't have the time for our sales personnel anymore. And they're not really bringing them things of value as much in terms of information anymore. And they're not really, in the old days, there used to be giveaways and incentives and all that stuff has gone by the wayside. So now sales reps are really looked at as, can you bring my office lunch? And if you can bring my office lunch, we'll talk to you. So we really think, especially with COVID, and our sales reps are really getting antsy right now, having to do remote details with doctors because they're having hard times. We really think that that's going to lead to a trend where more medical personnel are relied upon. So I really see MSL organizations growing. And I also see the use of more digital technology in the organizations. And I think that's also great opportunities for PharmDs to come in and do the many roles that we can do in terms of creating the information, whether it's in HEOR or whether it's in medical communications. So I see medical affairs probably as still being around for a long time, and also maybe growing in important because, you know, we're probably more dependent upon to communicate to the external healthcare providers than ever before. They want more medical affairs than sales nowadays, is what I think I say.
Thank you, Steve. Mia, would you like to weigh in on this?
Definitely. Would again agree with everything that was just said, and also say that at least for the HEOR function, and I say COVID definitely impacts this as well, as healthcare budgets are being increasingly scrutinized and a huge shift towards value-based care. There's huge emphasis on the ability to communicate value of either a drug or, in our case, a device. So I'd say definitely seeing increased importance and relevance of our function. And again, overall, the HEOR function, particularly in devices, is a newer function. But I would say definitely, I think for following ISPOR at all, it's pretty obvious that we're definitely growing. And I think increasingly we're seeing that our organizations can really see and understand the value of what we're doing with our different value communication tools and evidence generation efforts.
Okay. Faculty, anybody want to weigh in?
Yeah, I'd like to add to what Mia said in terms of the growing HR area is fast growing. Looking back, I think I told our students in class as well, looking back when I was in grad school like 5-6 years ago, we didn't have even the name of HEOR. People call that in different ways. And just within 5-6 years, this area really settled in with the HEOR named to it, and it's one of the fast growing area in pharmaceuticals and also device industry, because all of the payment models are moving toward, like Mia mentioned, the value-based payment model. So where HEOR area really contributes to that movement. So that's what I wanted to add to that.
I think we're also seeing major consolidation out there where the healthcare providers are now healthcare systems.
Yes.
I think that's going to drive a lot of it, even more with COVID. I think it's really affecting more like little practices, and they're all merging with bigger practices. So I think we're going to see more HEOR working across healthcare systems and being even more important than it's ever been. I think it's a great field.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have, let's see, 2 last questions that I think will sum up. And, you know, we just covered so much territory here. This, I think, has been extremely helpful for those students who are actually here live. And actually, this is being recorded. So for those, again, who couldn't be with us, they can go back and refer to this. So we spoke about, you know, how a student can sell themselves during an interview, the soft skills you look for, how do they conduct themselves, that they have you know, pretty much of a handle on how to articulate why they would like this opportunity, et cetera. But they only get to that point once their CV or letter of intent has been, you know, vetted, if you will, from your respective organizations. So my first question, or the question I guess to both of you, is what do you look for in a letter of intent from a student who's applying for a position? And then what do you look for in that CV? What are you looking for that CV? Where does it pop? What really jumps out at you that makes you want to take this student further and actually have them come for an interview? So I don't care what order you answer the question, but basically that's how I would kind of, you know, want to wrap up the meeting here. So Mia, you want to take that question first?
Sure. And so hopefully what I say is not necessarily controversial. But I would say personally, I think a letter of intent is much more something that can secure you in an interview than your resume. I think the resume, if you hit certain boxes, is more of a check the box. You can more probably, I would say, do harm with your resume. Because I would say most students coming into us, we want to see, again, that you have strong, I'd say just speaking on the resume, the check the box elements are, we know everyone's obviously coming in with a strong educational background. So the ability to excel in classes is obviously important. Obviously lots of clinical experience, any relevant industry experience is obviously important. But we know obviously students may not have a ton depending on different degrees. I would say what's super important in resumes is that there are no mistakes. So, and I would say particularly grammar, sloppiness, that it's clean and simple to look at. So I would say those are definitely things that we notice, that if it's grammar errors, things like that, because this is you putting your best foot forward, that you should be putting time into. So if there are errors in that, it makes me think that a candidate may be sloppy in their professional work as well. And I would say in the letter of intent, it's pretty similar to what I've spoken about in the interview. Again, it's all about communication. I don't want to see a student just listing all the different experiences that they've had in their resume. I want to see a student being speaking to me, articulating what are the transferable skills that they're getting from their experience, and why they're interested in the particular job experience, and why they think they might be a good candidate. So it's really being able to kind of make your resume experiences come to light.
Okay, great. That very helpful, Mia, and you know, very interesting because I've had always thought this, but you kind of spoke it when I've always said the letter of intent opens the door, and you kind of just sealed the deal for me on that. So you validated what I've been saying for quite some time. So thank you for that. Steve, I'll let you finish up.
Ditto. That's what I have to say. Ditto to both of you on that. It's so true. We will see the resumes, and what Mia said, I mean, make sure you proofread it. You don't want to be derailed by a typo or a mistake or sloppiness. Make sure it's clean, make sure it's to the point. Don't make it excessive either. We see some things that are a little bit excessive. Just make sure everything's listed out. And we do expect everybody to have the educational experience. We will look for your rotations and your practical. And we realize you'll have some work experience, but you're coming really to finally get into industry and begin your career. So we know you're not going to have a long history of work experience, so that's okay. But yes, that letter of intent is really what's going to bring you to life and connect you with the person. And so you really want to talk to, yes, your experiences and put them in ways that we are going as a reader say, well, this is what we're looking for. Just try to avoid though overdoing it. Keep it short to the point, but make sure it's also thoughtful and that you're hitting some of the things that you think we might want to look for. Just try to avoid going a little bit too far and too long with it.
Okay, thank you, Steve. So before I ask for kind of closing words of advice, that's kind of just a open forum, I did have the chat room open for students to submit any questions they may have thought of during the session, but I don't see any now. So I'll give you a couple of other seconds if you just want to pop them in the chat box, but I will let, I don't know, our faculty, would you like to say any just closing remarks or advice for our students? And then I can just close with our guests here. Anybody?
Yeah, definitely, Dean Rossi. Well, I don't have any questions. I did send a message to the students to let them know that they can send their questions to the chat box, and then we'll be happy to read it out to the panel. But I did want to add something that came across when I was, listening to the resume and the letter. I think one really big point that I wanted to make sure students receive today is that one size doesn't fit all. And going back to when we had talked about, don't put your eggs in the same basket, that do consider applying for multiple fellowships within the same area. If you're interested in AGOR, definitely explore all different companies that offer that experience, but don't use the same letter to go across all those companies. You can end up making errors, which will be, not in your favor at all. You won't be able to save yourself out of that. But definitely sit down and write your letters for each company. Think about rearranging your resumes for each position, because it's not once you finish that CV or your resume, you're like, okay, I'm done. Now I can send it out to everybody. Do not do that. Definitely think about the positions and who it's going to sort of make sure you're targeting very specifically for that area, and always double, quadruple, read it multiple times. Don't work on it the night before the deadline. The application deadline is due. So just those little things to keep in mind, that one resume, one CV, one letter doesn't fit all.
Excellent point, Dr. Patel. Okay.
Yeah, this is Dr. Uchuku. So I have, it's not really a question, but I guess maybe Steve and Mia can chime in, which is the question of the letter of intent versus the CV, because I know that sometimes companies will ask for a letter of intent when they don't have a specific job for, to offer you. So it's kind of like, tell me why you're interested in working for us, toss your coin into the hat, as it were, versus a cover letter that is specific for a particular job. So do you have anything to say regarding that? So differences between a letter of intent and a CV, or do your organizations consider them the same? A cover letter, not a CV. So a letter of intent and a cover letter.
Okay. Thank you, Otito. Okay.
I think the latter would be harder to write, but I think you pretty much have to write about what you do know you're applying to, whether it's the organization or the company. I think you'd have to write to that more than the position. Okay. So I think the latter might be a little bit more difficult. It sounds kind of broad. So that might be a challenge. But I think one thing you should always do too, one of my students actually showed me his today as he's preparing them and asked me my advice. So the more professional eyes you can get on it, if you guys have any preceptors that are willing to look at it right now and give you some advice, you never know what they might find out. What they like to recommend, see.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Steve, because some of our students are either finishing up, some of their rotations, and they're with this preceptor day in and day out for 5 weeks. So take the liberty of like you say, getting another pair of eyes and using that person to perhaps do a mock interview with you or something like that. Just capitalize on that time that you have with them. So, okay. Mia, did you want to add anything to that question about just like a letter of intent versus a cover letter, or what is your experience with that?
Because our function is so specific, and if you're kind of applying straight from pharmacy school, it likely wouldn't be too different. But I definitely want to echo the point of, for your materials, share them and get other sets of eyes on them, either different preceptors, people on the rotation, if they're career services. I know when I was in school, that was always a service that was provided. So just get other sets of eyes besides yourself on your materials can sometimes be helpful.
So just to be sensitive to everyone's time, we're kind of nearing 8 o'clock. So are there any questions that I did not ask, Steve and Mia, that you were, either prepared to have a student ask or answer, or, educate them or enlighten them a little bit? So I'll just, give you a moment to just kind of wrap up, your thoughts on our whole little meeting here today, and any last words of advice or insight for our students. So Steve, you want to go first?
I think we discussed a lot today, and I'm always available if anybody has any questions and I can ever help them with it. I'd like to wish everybody the best of luck. And try to really think about some of the things that we said today, because as Barbara said, we really are giving you the scoop from inside. And I think that scoop will kind of help you. And I just want to wish everybody best of luck and let you know I'm certainly available anytime you have any questions.
Okay, and thank you so much for that, Steve. It's just a pleasure having both yourself and your colleagues in Bayer as one of our affiliates and partners. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. We're glad to be partners with FDU.
Okay, Mia, any parting words?
Also think we had a great discussion this evening. And also, if anyone has any additional questions, feel free to follow up. The one, I would say, advice that I know I was given that's been helpful is always think about take whatever opportunities that are given to you. Know that obviously just keep on putting yourself out there and putting yourself forward, and know that eventually everything your efforts will follow through and will bring you what you want in the end.
Okay, thank you. And thank you very much for our faculty as well, Dr. Patel and Dr. Hahn and Dr. Otito, for their time. And, they're always available at the school, although remotely now until we get back on campus with everybody working remotely. So I just want to thank you again for your time and for just your questions in general, and just for being, advocating for your career and being a little bit proactive to even attend tonight to get yourself kind of in gear for the next couple of weeks and months ahead for the interview process. So I wish all of you students well. You know where to find us all. And Steve and Mia, if you don't mind, I will share your contact information with our students if you don't mind. And unless you would like, they can reach out to us. And if they ask for you specifically, we can be the portal so that you don't get inundated with emails. And if they have a specific question for you or me, I can kind of convey that question to you on their behalf, if that's okay.
I don't mind at all. They're not going to inundate me. And this is my way of giving back for somebody who has been so blessed with his career. So I really relish this, and that's why I'm doing it. So please share it.
Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. So everyone have a great evening, and we'll all keep in touch. Okay. Take care now.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
So I guess there's no